Hello Collision fans to Under the Scarescope. I'm Fedora, and today we're going to be talking about the sequel to, in my opinion, one of the best horror movies of recent years, Insidious 2. Now already this movie had the odds stacked against it from the get-go. I mean, 1 being a sequel, 2 being a sequel to such a great movie like the original Insidious. So people were kind of curious how this would turn out, or whether or not it would be any good. The movie picks up at the conclusion of the original upon Lin Shaye's death, and obviously Patrick Wilson being the man behind it. Now the police are getting involved in this because they're wondering obviously what the hell happened, and Rose Byrne's character is obviously sticking up for her husband because she, like everyone else, wants to believe that the whole ordeal with the ghosts and the further is all behind them now, and she wants her family to move on from that. This naivete lasts all the way up to the point where they move into Patrick Wilson's mother's house while their own house is getting swept over by the police. Because ghosts once again start appearing. But this time it's not the fault of young Dalton and his astral projection skills. This time it's due to Patrick Wilson and whatever creature has now inhabited his body. Instead of a lipstick-faced demon or a bride in a black dress, this time we have this mysterious woman in a long white gown leading the charge of spookies this time around. And she actually has a connection with the bride in black, which is quite good. Which it leads into an actual twist involving the bride, which I found really, really good. It's not something that James Wan originally planned when he was making the first Insidious. It was something he put into this one. And it was a very clever choice because while it didn't make any, there was no questions about the bride in black herself other than who she was and where she came from. It was really good, and it definitely opened up a whole new chapter to that. As far as pros go, well, the obvious one right off the bat. All the original cast return for this one. They're all fantastic. Rose Byrne, Patrick Wilson, as I've mentioned. Everyone comes back to reprise their roles because, I mean, they all just had such a great time, and they also had such a great chemistry with each other in the original one. Angus Sampson comes back reprising his role along with his sidekick as well as the goofy paranormal investigators, who added just that right amount of humor to this movie without being too spoofy. So it allowed people to laugh as well as jump at this movie as well. It was just the right balance. The scares are prime, that classic James Wan touch of having something at the corner of your eye, not directly in line of the camera. So one of those things that people would just go point off and go, "Oh, look at that! Did you see that?" And there was a woman standing in the corner, or a little boy hiding in the shadows of that shot, not focused on. It's a really clever move, and it gets people to look around the screen a lot more. So there was plenty of that. The scares are just as great as they were in the first movie, although once that might be a bit of a con as well. I might go into that a little more, but yeah, I found it really entertaining on that regard. So it didn't lose its touch in being a sequel. Cons may link to what I just said about pros, because although all the scares and all that are here, it felt that maybe there wasn't much of a change between the first two movies. Now that might be a good thing, but it might also be a bit of a downer because it felt this movie maybe wasn't doing too much on its own regard. Maybe it was just imitating too much from the original. And I don't know, that's up to your opinion whether or not that was a good move or not, but maybe it just felt that this movie wasn't standing out too much on its own. One more con. This is probably the biggest one for me. Now, the woman in white, as I mentioned, she's pretty much the main villain of the film. But I think she adds too much of just a two-dimensional evil. Now, while we had the further ghosts and the demon from the original, you could sort of see them as, I don't know, lost souls who were just tormented and wanted to escape the hell that they were residing in. But this woman, as you will see watching the movie, didn't have any of that. She just seemed like she's just a bad guy. Ooh, she was just like staple evil. She had no other characterization to her. It made the movie just a bit too black and white, in my opinion. And that view led into the ending of the movie, which I felt kind of stapled that, because the way she's dealt with at the end of the movie was once again very black and white, and I know, quite anticlimactic, unfortunately. So in that regard, obviously I'm going to have to say that this movie, while enjoyable, really was not as good as the first one. Nowhere near as good as the first one, unfortunately. But that's just my opinion, you're definitely entitled to your own. And that's all we have time for on Under the Scaroscope tonight. So, I'm Fedora. Check out some of the other great channels at Collision, or check out my channel, Spud in the Hat 1. And we'll see you next time.